Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Red Mist podcast with me, Seshadri, and welcome to the England squad announcement reaction. Yes, Gareth Southgate finally announced his England squad for the European Championships. Now, bear in mind, it's not the final 26-man squad, although there were a lot of rumours that that is in fact what he was going to do. But it is instead a 33-man squad which has been announced in preparation for the European Championships. The squad will be reduced down to 26 on by the deadline of June 1st, at which point we will know what the final what the final teams are. Now there was a lot of talking points going into the announcement, and I think the biggest one was obviously involving a Liverpool player, Trent Alexander-Arnold. In many people's eyes, he's the best right back in the world, if not one. I mean, if not the best, he's at least one of the best. He's like the top three right backs in the world, I think, at this point in time. But there were a lot of question marks as to whether or not he would be included in the England squad, which I thought was ridiculous because he offers England something that none of the other right backs do. Maybe Kieran Trippier comes close, but none of the other, Kyle Walker, Reece James, Aaron Wan-Bissaka, he doesn't, they don't actually do that. But on the flip side of things, there are certain weaknesses in his game. He's young, he's still learning, he has a bright future ahead of him. Let's not get that twisted. He's got a bright future ahead of him for England, for Liverpool. And this is not going to be the end of the world for him if he doesn't make the European Championship squad. But at the same time, going into the Euros without Trent, who's arguably been the best right back this entire season. Yes, he's had dips in form, but that has some stuff to do with what's going on with Liverpool as a whole. The forwards not firing, the defense being half the time in the hospital. So there's stuff relating to that which affects Alexander-Arnold and his game as well. But generally speaking, he's been the best right back in the country. So for England to go without him would have been a big talking point, and it still could be. The final squad is not out. It still could be a big talking point to go without him. But he is in the final team now. He is in the provisional team. Sorry. A couple of interesting names as well who are in the provisional team, and we'll get to talk about them. A couple of people who aren't in the provisional team, we'll talk about them as well. So let's start with, without further ado, let's just start with the goalkeepers, right? So one of the big things going into the tournament, Nick Pope is having knee surgery. There's a good chance he will not be ready by the time the opening game comes around, and possibly even for some time into the tournament if he's taken. So there is some leeway with regard to goalkeepers this tournament because of COVID and stuff like that. So if someone gets COVID, you are allowed to call a replacement keeper who's not in the original 26-man squad. So that there is some sort of leeway there. But at the same time, I agree with Gareth Southgate on the issue that it's too risky to take Nick Pope to the Euros at this point in time with his surgery scheduled. So goalkeepers have gone with the four sort of Premier League keepers. You've got Dean Henderson, Jordan Pickford, Sam Johnstone and Aaron Ramsdale. Sam Johnstone obviously was in the squad in March when Pickford couldn't be there. So he has trained with the team, so he will very likely make the final cut. Aaron Ramsdale, I think he's just been taken there as sort of a precaution in case one of these keepers gets injured in training. I don't realistically see Ramsdale being in the squad, although he has had a good end to the season. Yes, Sheffield got relegated, but he has had a good end to the season. His performances for 3/4 of the season was pretty shambolic, but for the last 1/4 or so, he's improved a little bit. That's not to say, that he's doing better than some of the others on this squad list, but he has improved his game a little bit. I would personally have also thrown Karl Darlow into the mix. I think even more than Ramsdale, I think I would have probably preferred Karl Darlow, but he's obviously him losing his place to Dubravka in the Newcastle lineup didn't help. But he did have a really good first half of the season. So maybe just to see what it's like, or what Darlow is like, I might have actually just taken him to the provisional squad. But again, you can't have a squad that's too bloated up as well. So 4 keepers, I think it's fine. Ramsdale obviously has been playing regularly for Sheffield, so yeah, fair enough. Now coming to defence, I mentioned Trent Alexander-Arnold. He is in the squad. Trent Alexander-Arnold. I'll just go through the names first. These are not with respect to position. But we'll go through the names and then we'll discuss people who've been left out, because I do feel like defense is like the one area where England could be exposed with maybe an injury, maybe a suspension, whatever the case may be. I feel like defense is like the one area that could potentially be exposed. So I'm just going to go ahead and read out the names first. So we've got Trent Alexander-Arnold, Ben Chilwell, Connor Cody, Ben Godfrey, Reece James, Harry Maguire, Tyrone Mings, Luke Shaw, John Stones, Kieran Trippier, Kyle Walker and Ben White. Now, a couple of surprising names there. So Ben Godfrey is one. I'm not really surprised, but I think the fact that he hasn't been capped before is a little bit of a surprise for me, because he was having a solid season, maybe not a standout season like John Stones towards the second half and Harry Maguire pretty much through the entire season. But Ben Godfrey's had a good season, solid. I do feel like he definitely deserved it. Can play across the back line, can play right back, left back, and centre back as well. So that helps with versatility. I don't think he'll make the final squad, and I think even in his press conferences there was a little bit of an indication from Southgate that Ben Godfrey is probably not going to make the final squad, but the experience will be good for him. The other name, which is way more surprising, I think, is Ben White. And see, this is the thing that grates me, because I think there are defenders who've performed better than Ben White in the league who are English. For example, Ezri Konsa has done really well for Aston Villa. In fact, I think he's been better than Tyrone Mings, who's actually in the squad. I think he has been the better Aston Villa defender, Ezri Konsa. So I was, and he's played in the youth setup for England. So I'm really surprised he's actually not in the squad. I genuinely assumed that, I'll be honest, I personally assumed Portugal would make a pass for Ezri Konsa, because you look at Portugal's starting lineup. Every spot has a world-class player in it except the second centre-back spot. And I'm not saying Pepe is not world-class, but he's not the Pepe of Real Madrid. He is, he's aging. You've got Fonte there. You've got a couple of other guys as well. I think Ruben Semedo's there. So I really thought Ezri Konsa, with the season that he's had, I really thought Portugal would make an attempt to convince Konsa to play for them. When they didn't, I was a little surprised, but I assumed it was because Konsa reiterated his commitment to England and he thought he actually had a shot. Which, to be fair, I actually thought he had a shot at being in the England team. At least the provisional team. I think if you're going to call up inexperienced people, might as well have called up Ezri Konsa, because I really thought he did well. The other person I want to talk about is Fikayo Tomori out at Milan. I really thought Tomori should have been in the squad. I think, we talked a little bit about the centre-back situation for England and how a little precarious it is. John Stones and Harry Maguire, if something happens to these two, or even one of these two, England's in a very bad situation when it comes to centre-backs. Because your options behind them are guys like Conor Cody, who's not been in good form. You've got Tyrone Mings, who's not been in good form. And you've got Ben White in the squad. And maybe Ben Godfrey and guys like, Reece James can play centre-back a little bit. Kyle Walker can play centre-back a little bit. But genuinely speaking, I think if you want a good natural centre-back, I think the answer has to be, Fikayo Tomori or Ezri Konsa, because possibly even both. Like I personally would have taken both of them, because I think they've done better than Conor Cody, they've done better than Tyrone Mings. So I don't understand how Ben White gets a shot at being in the England team, but somehow Fikayo and Ezri don't. Like I just don't get it. And even in Brighton, Ben White was not the best defender. Like Lewis Dunk was a better defender than him. So, I mean, if you are going to take someone from Brighton, you could have, and if you wanted someone who's been in the England setup before, you could have taken Lewis Dunk, because he's been in the England setup before. He knows how things work. Like, why would you? Look, personally, I think it's just for experience. I think he's just taken them for experience. I don't think Ben White and Ben Godfrey are going to make the final team. But that being said, I don't think Tyrone Mings and Conor Cody should be there as well. I think the only reason Tyrone Mings is in the squad is because he's left-footed. Like, I genuinely don't see how he's had a better season than Ezri Konsa or Fikayo Tomori. Even Michael Keane, for example, he's had a better season in my opinion than Tyrone Mings. So, and he's definitely had a better season than Conor Cody. So I don't understand how guys like Michael Keane can be left out, how guys like Tomori can be left out, Ezri Konsa. Like I just don't get it. I do feel like, these three should feel like they've been hard done by. Let's put it that way. Now, coming to midfield, we've also got a couple of question marks, injury question marks, and that's something that surrounds Harry Maguire as well, I should mention. But Maguire won't play the Europa League finals, I don't think. How serious his injury is, we'll have to wait and see, because England have got real problems if they can't go with Maguire into the tournament. So we'll see how that goes. But speaking of midfield, we've got injury concerns here as well. But before we get onto that, we'll get to the names. There's a notable omission as well in this set of players, and we'll talk about him. So we've got in the provisional squad, we've got Jude Bellingham from Borussia Dortmund, Jordan Henderson, Jesse Lingard, Mason Mount, Calvin Phillips, Declan Rice, James Ward-Prowse. So here's my thing, right? in terms of central midfield, I think that's a solid set of players. I definitely think, Mason Mount's travelling to Euros. Like, there's no question. He's been Chelsea's best player, and he's been, he's been a standout player. Like, I've got a team of the season episode planned for later this week, possibly coming after the Champions League final. So, he's definitely one of the front runners for that, the central midfield spot. So Mason Mount has had a great season. He's in the Champions League final with Chelsea. He's been a key player for them. He's been instrumental in them getting there. So I would say, Mason Mount is probably a certainty to go. Now, there are injury concerns, like I mentioned, over Calvin Phillips, who suffered an injury on the last day of the Premier League season. Then you've got injury concerns with Jordan Henderson, who's still recovering, although he is back in training, so that's good news for England. And the indications are he will probably and very likely go to the Euros as well. Now, the one player that I think is missing, and is a glaring omission, I suppose, in some ways, is James Maddison. But to a degree, I do actually understand why he was eliminated. I think, and Gareth Southgate mentioned in the press conference as well. There's loads of options when it comes to central midfield and attacking midfield for England. That's the one area that England are really not short on. So, yeah, I mean, when you look at it that way, Maddison's season, he was doing really great, and I think there was a point where it was very close between him, Mount, Grealish and Foden, and you could have your pick of 3 out of 4 in that case. But I think his injuries have derailed him. I think, and Southgate mentioned this in the press conference as well. He's been taken off of set piece duty, whether that's by design or because of his injury situation, and it's just that Tielemans has been doing really well from set pieces. We don't quite know, but the fact that all these factors have combined, and ultimately it's resulted in Maddison losing his place in the England squad, because when you look at what sets him apart, it's his creativity and his set pieces. I remember him scoring a really good goal against Liverpool, for example. But now you've got in the England squad, you've got James Ward-Prowse, for whom a 30-yard free kick is basically a penalty. So yeah, I mean, you've got him, you've got Mason Mount, who can take free kicks as well, and then you've got guys like Trippier, Trent, Alexander-Arnold, who can take free kicks. So there's really no dearth of set-piece takers in the squad, and when it comes to creativity, you've got guys like Mount, you've got guys like Lingard's playing really well as well, you've got Grealish, you've got Foden, so that's really not an area where they're short on. So I would say Maddison, as unfortunate as it is, I think he would have really been looking forward to going to the Euros. I think at the end of the day, it's just, it is what it is. And yeah, I mean, I don't think he can have much complaints, but, look forward to maybe getting to the World Cup squad a year and a half from now. But that's about midfield. Is there any midfielder that I do think should have made the squad but didn't? Maybe Emil Smith-Rowe from Arsenal. Although it's a little bit of a distant shot, and I think he will go with the under-21s if they have some games in the summer. But, I think Emil Smith-Rowe maybe if you're giving experience to guys like Ben White, I think, Emil Smith-Rowe probably deserves it, on the back of the season that he's had for Arsenal. Yeah, I don't really think there are many other midfielders that I would say have been, left out as such. Maybe Jack Harrison from Leeds, potentially. Again, if you're giving experience to someone, maybe Jack Harrison. Obviously, he's a winger. But yeah, maybe him. But yeah, I don't think I really don't think Southgate's made too many mistakes with midfield here. Moving on to the forward line, I think you've got Dominic Calvert-Lewin, Phil Foden, Jack Grealish, Mason Greenwood, Harry Kane, Marcus Rashford, Bukayo Saka, Jadon Sancho, Raheem Sterling, and Ollie Watkins. Now, I think the biggest omission has to be Patrick Bamford. Ollie Watkins being taken ahead of him. I know he was taken ahead of him in March, but if you are going to release a provisional squad, I think a guy who scored 17 goals and has 7 assists in the Premier League and is, he's proven his doubters wrong. Let's be real. I'll be very honest. I was one of the people who doubted him. I genuinely did not think Patrick Bamford would be this good in the Premier League. So for me, it's like, I mean, the guy has outperformed what people's expectations were. And he's done really well. He works really hard in a Leeds team that presses really high. I think he'd have been a perfect fit for games in which England find themselves without the ball. I'm not saying he's going to start over Harry Kane, but if you are going to play a sort of two-striker system, then I do think having Bamford and Kane together, I think the pressure that they would bring is quite insane. Obviously, international football, you don't see as much coordinated pressure because teams just don't have that much time to train and to familiarize themselves with that sort of a system. But I think it would have done England a lot of good to have someone with proven goal scoring pedigree. And this is not a knock against Ollie Watkins. Believe me, I love Ollie Watkins. But I do think he has not had a better season than Patrick Bamford. And if you're going to call up Ollie Watkins, I think you at least deserve to give Patrick Bamford a look into the squad. So for me, Patrick Bamford not being there is a big, big miss. As for other players, I think there's not really many that I would say have been left out. I think I mentioned Jack Harrison a while back. I do think if you're going to give a look to someone, then Jack Harrison's probably should have been looked at. Emil Smith-Rowe, I mentioned midfield. I don't think there's any players you're going to leave out. But yeah, I think that's overall my thoughts on this England team. It's a good squad. It's definitely a squad that I think can compete. But I would say a lot depends on how they play. Because I think if you look at the top 4 teams, which in my opinion are Italy, France, England and Portugal. If you look at them, I would say England should comfortably, at least on paper, I would say England should comfortably be the third best team in the tournament. I think behind France and Portugal. I think France just have too much quality. I think it was a little bit of a toss-up between France and Portugal for me. But when Benzema decided to come back and, when Benzema's backup is a guy like Olivier Giroud, who's done really well for France, I think, France has the most quality amongst all its 26 players. Portugal is second. I think, like I mentioned, the only weakness I can find is the second centre-back spot, which I still can't believe they didn't call up Ezri Konsa. But, they have their reasons for not doing so. Italy, I would say they have a little more weakness. I think up front, they're not as strong. They do have striker problems, whether it's Ciro Immobile or Andrea Bellotti or Giacomo Raspadori. So whoever plays, I think there's going to be some issues with Italy. I don't think they're as prolific. And I think they have issues at wing back. I know they have Florenzi, the Napoli right back, I forgot his name, Di Lorenzo. At left back, they've got Biraghi and Spinazzola, I think. So not the best quality of wing backs. But I think just out of an overall, I think England sort of slot in somewhere between the strengths of Italy and Portugal. Because keepers, I would say Nick Pope has been the best keeper, but I think England's going to go with Pickford for this tournament. I think he's done. He's had the experience of being in a big tournament, and more than other positions, I think defense and goalkeeper. If you have that experience, it's really good. I do think Nick Pope is a better keeper, though. To be completely honest with you, defense, I would say they have a good defense. With Maguire, Stones, whether they play Walker or Trent, whoever it is, and Luke Shaw on the other side. But beyond that, I think depth is a concern, especially at centre-back, because I think left-back, they have Ben Chilwell to cover for Shaw. At right-back, they have a whole bunch of options. Midfield's pretty decent. Forward line, Harry Kane's had an unbelievable season, and then you got guys like Phil Foden, you've got guys like Jadon Sancho, who's been tearing it up for Dortmund in the Bundesliga. So you've got players who I would say can win you a tournament, but a lot will depend on how they're coached. On paper, England to me are the third best team in the tournament, but how they're coached is going to make a huge difference. The kind of football they play, the style of football they play, whether I know Southgate's a pragmatic coach, but I think finding the right balance between pragmatism and the quality of squad that he has in terms of creativity or in terms of technique, in terms of vision, in terms of how attacking they are. Because you look at guys like Harry Kane, you look at guys like Jack Grealish, Phil Foden, they're going to, Mason Mount even to a degree, they're going to create stuff out of nothing. So how do you exploit that without compromising too much on your backline is, I think, going to be the key. And frankly speaking, Southgate will need it because he'll need to get his bearings right. He need to get his squad selection right, because I think this is probably the best chance in many years that England have had to win a tournament. So for me, he has to get it absolutely spot on. Otherwise, it's going to be an early exit for England. But those are my thoughts on the England squad selection so far. 33 players named, a few major names missing out, but overall a very good, solid squad. And hopefully, we'll see how it goes. We'll see how the tournament goes. But on 1st of June, the final 26-man squad will be named. It'll be interesting to see if Trent Alexander-Arnold is being taken. The right back question is very, very important. But we'll see. We'll see how that pans out. But that is going to do it from me for today, reacting to the England squad that has just been announced this evening. Evening in India, afternoon in the UK, whatever it is. But wherever you are, hopefully you guys are doing well. Hopefully you guys are having a fantastic day, a fantastic week. And I will see you guys next time. Goodbye.